We're going to go ahead and get started. So I wanted to, usually the schedule for concerned Black American citizens is to have these weekly meetings. Hey, Christian, have these weekly meetings of organizers, and this is also for Dr. Jennings' benefit. We are a combination. Here's Detroit checking in. We are a combination of, mainly, I would say everybody here represents an organization, a grassroots. We are green shoots. Green shoots, even more so than grassroots at this point. But we represent pretty much the country. We've got New York, we've got Washington State in here, we got Tennessee, we got Michigan, we got Chicago, we got Kentucky, we got North Carolina, we got the DMV area. And this is just some of the people that come through. But what we do is come together on a weekly basis. I had the luxury of learning to getting a job as a paid political organizer. And that's when I realized the political organizing industrial complex. And so I had taken that training and adapted it to our movement. And we use those techniques that the Democratic Party uses so well to get us out to vote, using those same techniques to get us, to teach us how to build power bases locally and to register voters around our policy, and then to ultimately get both politicians elected and those politicians to support our policies. Then the other thing that we do also, of course, is support federal reparations. That is the origin of this whole entity. But we also have campaigns that we run and calls to action, and we'll talk about that more at the end. So I want to jump into what I was saying, why this is a more open meeting, because I feel we're at a place here in the reparations fight where as we get more into the community, which is what really the purpose of CBAC is, because I feel like we are filling a hole in the market, so to speak, that sort of the curb to the front door. Like most city services stop at the curb unless they're coming to pick up your children or arrest you. But we have got to get the message to the doorsteps of the people. We've got to get the masses involved, because I believe over in the past that our movements have died out for multiple reasons. Obviously, Dr. Jennings would be able to share that, our leaders are targeted, they get burnt out, jobs, what have you. And so it seems like every time we've really had, sort of like a vacuum created whenever, that has tended to happen, because our movements have been very concentrated at the middle class and upper class among us. So in doing that, we get out here and we're actually talking to people about these concepts that we've been talking about among ourselves. And when we go out into the real world, of course, we talk about reparations, and we're faced with Black Americans who are homeless, who are working poor and homeless, under a great deal of stress, because there's really, just seems to be no lifeline for them. Housing is difficult, whether you're trying to rent or not. But basically, their basic hierarchy of needs are not being met. And so you find when you go in and talking to the community, and getting them, telling them about reparations and lineage, that you have kind of like a reckoning. There are certain basic needs that have to be met before people can start to think about, liberation. And I pretty sure the Black Panther Party of Defense knew that they had to feed the bellies, as well as feeding the minds of the people. So that's sort of where we're at. And so when I look at what's going on in our community, I think I just stumbled across an article called The Fallacy of Reparations as a Debt. And I was like, wow, what's this? And that led me to, so when I read the article, that's when it discussed framing reparations in the framework of genocide as opposed to a quote unquote debt, where we tallied up the hours we work, et cetera, et cetera. And it struck me because in this article or essay, it touched on the fact that some people are offended when we talk about reparations in terms of debt and what's owed, and how, if we say check, people are like, it's more than a check. And that framing it in that concept just doesn't seem to capture, the humanity, the human element. But when you talk about genocide, reparations for genocide, and the cessation of what has been being done to us, and that the reparations is apology, a demonstration or manifestation of how sorry that the entity or the state is, and the purpose is to repair as well. So those things are basically that's the situation that we're dealing with, is how do we get people to understand how important reparations are. And when we look at it through that lens, everything falls into place under the umbrella of what Khalif has brought to my attention, a term called structural violence. So anyway, with that, I've talked enough. I want to go ahead and get into this presentation, and it's only a couple minutes, and stop me. And I hope you can see this. Please let me know if you cannot see this. But where is the presentation? This thing is in the way. Let's see.
What was the word you used in place of grassroots?
I said green shoots.
Yeah, okay, cool.
I said green. We are newer than that, but anyway, okay, so let's go back to the share. Okay, so can everybody see this?
Yes. Yeah, yes.
Okay, all right. So the anti-genocide norm is actually a thing, and I was going back, and as I was doing my work, delving more into the topic of genocide as it relates to our reparations fight, I discovered, the strength of the argument. One is that instead of being based on slavery, which is from this reading that I wrote, but instead of it being based on slavery, which was legal and is currently legal, genocide is not. And genocide also has no statute of limitations. There's more detail to it, but broadly, that's what I want us to understand, the strength that genocide has no statute of limitations. And in looking at the history, I came across an article that spoke about how the Black liberation movement, represented by, SNCC, but more importantly, Black Panther Party of Defense, that they were basing their demands based on genocide. And what appeared to me that at a certain, just like what we saw with the 1965, it seems like, that Kwame Ture and people of that era were going over to Africa, and where they had been talking about genocide in terms of the lynchings in the South and the maternal mortality rate and all the things we're still like suffering from now. When they went before the UN, this is a civil rights convention with Paul Robeson. You know, it seems like after that point, it became us talking about genocide shifted, you know, to a civil rights fight, you know, civil rights for all, that there was some globalists or Pan-Africanists, you know, very innocent, I guess, at first, but interaction, and then the cry against genocide morphed into more of genocide being a fight against global white supremacy. And so then here we are. So, you know, I see it, what's called as the anti-genocide norm, which I'll show you, and Black liberation on the side of ending genocide, whereas civil rights, Dr. King, and so on, the Civil Rights Act, were more about ending racism and discrimination worldwide. So, Article 2, the Genocide Convention definition of the crime of genocide. The other thing about genocide is that the bars are considerably lower than proving like a discrimination or racism. There's a mental element. It's basically the intent to destroy an ethnic or racial group. And then there's a physical element. And these 5 acts basically, as you'll see, apply to us over and over again. And varies. You can look at it through the lens of food apartheid. When you look at killing members of the group, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction, in whole or in part, imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group, and forcibly transferring children of the group to another group. We obviously know that speaks to us. Like I said, you can look through it the lens of food apartheid. Look at Buffalo. Look at this connection between the disruption of our food supply since we have been emancipated. And that's the other thing about this ethnic or racial group. I think this is where freedmen really comes into play as a class, because what we're talking about is a group of people who are emancipated from slavery. And with that emancipation came a debt. And obviously our country, from its actions, has made a decision to eliminate the debt. And that means by its actions, by its outcomes, that there's some intentionality there that we can show. So genocide versus ethnocide. Obviously, I just went over what genocide is. It's the physical destruction of the group. The other part, ethnocide, which I think a lot of us think we know what ethnocide is, you know, taking our culture away, and et cetera, but it refers to the forced, the deliberate suppression or elimination of a culture. So it's that, but it's also more specifically the custom. It's called exogamy, or the custom of marrying outside the community, clan, or tribe. Forced pregnancy, we know through rape, et cetera. Prevention of births, that's Planned Parenthood, that's forced sterilization, almost every state. Removal of children, obviously that's a foster care system, that's a prison system. Insistence on mainstream education without education in their own culture, and prohibition of the use of the mother tongue, distortion of history, and discrimination in access to cultural resources. For instance, we went from bookmobiles to public libraries, which at this point, 93% of basically white families use libraries, and we don't. Think of Tutneys, think of Gullah Geechee, think of AAVE. obviously we know about the distortion of history. Intent. Now, proving intent is often very difficult, and it's not just cultural destruction. That's not enough, nor is it the serial displacement. And, notice how white supremacy always goes back to try to cover itself. And you can see how, the United States said yes when the Genocide Convention Treaty was passed, but they didn't actually ratify it till 1986. But then 2 years later, the Japanese got their reparations. But they tried to make changes to it such that they could not be charged for, removal of, obviously, of Indians, but for mob violence, like the massacres, but basically try to, make changes before they actually accepted it. The other thing that's important is improving intent is that there's an existence of a state or organizational plan or policy. And that's even if the current definition. So we have a job also as Black American freedmen to add to the genocide argument, to the anti-genocide norm by articulating the new forms of genocide that are being exacted against us. This just talks about it more about intent, how it says that victims of the genocide are deliberately targeted, not randomly, and they excluded political groups like the Black Panthers, to basically as a means to protect themselves. But there are other ways in which, the Black Panther Party as a class of freedmen also are targeted, and that is part of the genocide. So the targeted destruction must be a group as such, not its members as individuals. We can prove all of this over and over again. Genocide can also be committed against only a part of the group, as long as that part is identifiable, including within a geographically limited area and substantial. So obviously, what has been done to the Black Panther Party of Defense classifies, in my opinion, as that. And this is just, I'm not going to go through all this, but the cost of freedom is responsibility is a quote that I just got from this white Republican mayor, who is the mayor of the city of the Reparations task force that I'm sitting on. But these are, if we needed to prove intent, that as freedmen, once we went from assets on the balance sheet to a debt on the balance sheet, which we represent, we can see that essentially the moment we were freed and the debt, that freedom, meant debt. That responsibility was a debt owed to us that this country has failed to meet. But we see a systemic or just basically a conventional wisdom or feeling about the newly freed slaves and the desire to get rid of them. So when we say, do we have an intent? Do we have, can we prove that there were organized state plans? Of course we can. It all started with Rutherford B. Hayes in 1877 when he made a deal, pulled out of the South, and ultimately 1,500 that we know of, American freedmen were lynched and killed. And we know about all the other things. And then we see in 1897, just these quotes about Negroes. And then Roosevelt, just systematically, one president or the other. So this is that, and I put this up here to establish, and I can share this I'll probably share it on the app. But to show you this systematic top-down tone from the president's office, Woodrow Wilson, segregation is not a humiliation, but a benefit. And he told the leaders of the day, if you act like it's a humiliation, then everyone else will accept it as such. And then we have Franklin Roosevelt. So basically, what I did is just looked at our situation, the Negro problem, you know about Margaret Sanger. So just looking at it through this lens, put it in a whole totally different perspective. It meant that, yes, we were owed as emancipated slaves millions, but then as freedmen, we were robbed of millions and we were robbed of our lives. So we suffered through the Mafa, which is the Holocaust of enslavement from 1492 to 1863, ending with a debt being owed to about 40 million freedmen. 4 million freedmen thus began the Negro problem. And then we come down to 1868, and I think that date is pivotal because as freedmen, with that came the obligation or the responsibility. Our freedom resulted in responsibility and obligation, not only to the states that were readmitted, but from the federal government, of course, for equal protection at bare minimum. So I believe, obviously, that the Negro problem is that a debt is owed, and that were it not for the various plans that were put into place, let's not forget the Jim Crow laws that were put in almost immediately after the 14th Amendment, the pulling out of the troops from the South, the rise of the KKK, the eugenicist movement, Planned Parenthood, and the African colonization movement, which began in 1812. So you talk about serial displacement. Almost immediately, as soon as we were being freed by will, by manumission, as a result of fighting in the Revolutionary War for our freedom, not for the country, so to speak, they were trying to ship all who were willing, back to Africa or outside of the state, but basically constantly moving us around. So I call 1863 to 1963 like the 100-year white Reconstruction era where we had the establishing of the racial caste system, and we had the 1862 Homestead Act, the codification of genocidal and structural economic violence against us with impunity. And then in 1964, and this is, we can do several timelines because also during this time we had some of the greatest advances. From 1870 to 1940, over 50,000 patents and inventions from our community, which is trails only behind the English and the German. So huge leaps and bounds in literature and art and everything else. So we get to 1964, and remember we talked in Back of the Hiring Line about the Great Leveling Period and how, there was a sliver of us that were able to achieve, great success. By 65 or heading into the 70s, it looks like, things were doing better. And then came the Civil Rights Act, the Immigration Act. And I just looked at these major reports that came out as almost like, it's like when they do studies on us, it seems like they become how-to manuals on how to destroy us. So that's why I went back and named this the Freedmen Deconstruction Area, from quantifying and erasing the debt. So I believe since 1964, they have essentially been studying us and erasing the debt. In 1965, the Immigration Act taught them how to dilute our political base, our neighborhoods. the level of immigration and lack of assimilation of new groups into our neighborhoods is also ethnocide. And you have to have ethnocide, in my opinion, or my understanding, before you get to genocide. And they've been very successful with that. The Kerner report in '68, I believe, gave them a manual on how to destabilize our families very effectively. In 1969, Nixon did the OMBE report, where he studied Black business and then came up with terms like minority and all of these other, and he learned how to destabilize the freedmen economic base. And then in 1997, the Honorable Barbara Jordan completed her 6-year study of immigration and how it hurts us. And we know that now that they've used that report to teach them how to weaponize immigration against our future population growth, et cetera, et cetera. So I think, and I want to give a shout out to Michael Hicks out in Kentucky. He recreated this chart so that we would not have to whatever. Anyway, so this is the 20-to-1 lineage wealth gap. And as I said, as emancipated American slaves, we were owed millions. As American freedmen, we continue to be robbed of millions. This gap, I contend, yes, it's accumulation of, the home equity gap, the education gap, the savings gap, the the gap. But it's also, I think we should look at this as the gap created by generations of structural, emotional, physical, and economic violence. And that's what this represents, 150 years of state-sanctioned genocidal policies and harms. And I think it's important for us to move away from categorizing these hate crimes like Buffalo, et cetera, police killings as just police killings, as, it happened again, as opposed to looking at it in a longer period of time and understanding what's special and unique about us as a federal class of people is that there is specific legislation that pertains to us, specific protections that are not owed to other groups. And, I think that, what we're seeing out here should not be in any way misconstrued as an acceleration. It should be seen as a continuation. And I do think that that's critical. So that's the end of that part. I have something else, but I want to stop here and give people time to breathe and not hear my voice for a minute. Some impressions of what I just went through.
Are you asking for feedback, Dawn, or just for us to?
Yes, I am. I'm asking for feedback.
Okay. Well, yes. I've been on the ethnocide genocide part of reparations. I think that's the angle. I've always supported that perspective with everything that's been happening, plus just from historical and everything that's been ongoing and studying Malcolm X and things of that nature. So I appreciate you doing this presentation and being able to bring this perspective to more of the activists in this space so that we understand what is really happening.
Yeah, that is definitely part of it, that I do feel like, this is something that I've been talking about and a couple other of us have been talking about, but I think it is critical, particularly as we go out into the community. People understand genocide. They will understand that, yes, they are trying to get rid of us. They might not understand why, which is where the discussion of lineage comes into play. And you tell them it is because we are this special group of people that we are owed 40 acres and tax exempt status and land, et cetera. And it is because we are owed this debt that there's a target on our back.
Even yesterday, and I know Nikki can speak on this, we went canvassing out in the community and people could tell, right? They knew something was wrong. And yes, they were very appreciative that we were speaking on it. So.
How do people feel about the, when I say, and this is based on what I've read, and even Erwin Chemerinsky, who is the Dr. Jennings, I don't know if Chemerinsky is the dean of the School of Law at UC Berkeley. And he is the one that we have been relying on as a resource to confirm that lineage-based policies and reparations is the only way to avoid any type of challenge from the Supreme Court or anyone. So we're relying on his information. But the other thing of it is that, like Chemerinsky said, Black Americans, African Americans are not owed reparations. That's what he put it. He said, you're not owed reparations. He said the descendants of slavery are owed reparations. And he said slavery is legal. He threw that in there. But genocide is not. Genocide is illegal. Genocide has no statute of limitations. And we know that trying to prove things based on race, the color of your skin, is out the window. There will be no direct compensation. And think of this: only living, walking victims get paid compensation, in my estimation. That's from everything I can see. You know, the first thing we're going to hear is all the slaves are dead. You weren't a slave. Slavery's still legal. That's what we're going to get. We are owed reparations for slavery, but not in the way we're arguing. We are owed reparations because we were slaves who were set free and then owed a debt of not only land, but protection from our government. And now we go through, starting from 1868, and march through all the policies. I've just ordered this book that goes through each presidency and points out the policies that specifically targeted us. So we just need lawyers and money, basically. And so we all have to move over and just shift. We are not saying that we weren't slaves and that we aren't owed money because we were slaves, but we were not slaves. We are the inheritors. We are standing in the shoes of our relatives, our ancestors, and we became subject to inheritance law once we became citizens. So we just want to talk about it more smartly so we don't have to clock any white boys out here or whoever, you know, when they come with that. So we're not running away from slavery. We're saying, yes, we were slaves. We are owed reparations. We are owed reparations because of the way you treated us, because you owed us when we became free. With that freedom came the cost of our freedom is responsibility, both for us and for the country that freed us. So then when we look at, like I said, all of the talking points that we already know, when we talk about the lineage wealth gap, now we want to put that through the lens, even the lineage wealth gap, as a physical manifestation of that genocide, of how successful it has been. And now just think about when we talk about food apartheid. Now when we talk about it's just not, oh, it's messed up, we're not getting our share, which is true. We pay taxes, we're not getting our fair share. But think about when we look at what genocide and preventing births, creating a environment where you cannot function. We know what how nutrition is important to the developing minds. Again, back to Dr. Jennings. They started a breakfast program. Interesting, the connection. when we were emancipated, almost 1 million of us died from starvation in addition to smallpox and whatever was going around. But when we look at Buffalo, a city that was primarily Black, and they went and they took out the food source, and we look at all around the country, how similar that, you know, how we have the same profile, how our food supply, so the basic hierarchy of needs is constantly destabilized, how we're 54% of the homeless. That's serial displacement. Serial displacement has been shown to be responsible for interpersonal and domestic violence. You know, so all of these things make so much more sense through the lens of genocide. But I just wanted to be clear that it's not walking away from slavery. It's saying it is very much because of that lineage of slavery. And then our new status as freedmen, that is where the debt was established. And we are a minority community faced with a hostile government that owes us trillions of dollars. So it all makes sense now. Obviously, it's not because you're Black. It is literally not because you're Black. I mean, you happen to be Black. It's not because you're a Negro. You happen to be a Negro, but it's because you were a slave. Not because of your color, your race, it's because you're because you were a slave who was then owed land, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that is the connection. And the strength of that argument lies on the lack of statute of limitations and the fact that genocide is illegal, the fact that it's ongoing, the fact that we are all living, walking victims of genocide. Dr. Jennings definitely is a triple, quadruple victim of genocide. So I want y'all to, you know, let that swim around in your heads and just think about that as just a little tweaking, you know, not a, you know, we're not changing anything. But we'll talk more about that going forward. But I do believe that this also gives us, you know, the justification for an Office of New Americans, because I'm sorry, Freudian slip, Office of Freedmen Affairs, because we need, you know, we need that protection. And I really think that that is the only way to look at it, you know. And with the charge of genocide, each of our states, especially North Carolina, which just paid out money for sterilization. See, if we had it together, the whole state of North Carolina, all of the Black folks in North Carolina would sue the state for genocide as well as the federal government. But I believe all that obviously justifies going back to the precedent. HR 51 was the act established, so the Freedmen's Office of Freedmen Affairs were the state level. So the Freedmen's Bureau, we want to support that, obviously. But yeah, so this is what it would look like. It's legislation, delineation, counting, but a county level Office of Freedmen Affairs that basically would disaggregate, enforce, protection, accountability, all the things that it, you know, was originally meant to do. I'd like to see it be a vehicle through which we reacquire land through abandoned lands. But yeah, this is what the ancestors had already laid out for us. So it's not that this is nothing new. And I find it so fascinating how we were, you know, before there was a, you know, anything really more than Black and white people here, how we were so much more on the genocide and the self-determination and Black liberation and segregation, and that it was a strategy to access equal, you know, equal services. And basically that was the strategy to get it, that were gonna, you know, it was easy to, I guess, deprive us if we were sectioned off, I guess. I don't know. But I'm gonna open this up. I want to throw this to Dr. Jennings. I would like for her to please introduce herself to the group. And I'm sorry, the two people, I'm gonna let the two people hold their, have their hand up. And then I'd like to kick it to Dr. Jennings for her take on this. And I'd also like her to share the story that she shared with me about the breakfast program. So I'm going to just go in order. We'll go Chitaki, and then Laredo, and then Dr. Jennings.
Yeah, no, we can't hear you, Chitaki.
Okay. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
So I just want to clarify to make sure I'm hearing you right, because I did have this conversation with a group of my peers yesterday, because I'm trying to have this conversation with people that are close to me to just get their feel. And having this conversation, I'm really understanding the whole lineage, because, you know, I found out, although we all look alike phenotypically, I am discovering that lineage wise, we really aren't. You know, I found one, you know, her grandmother was Irish immigrant. Did not know that, you know, so as I'm discussing reparations with them, you know, from their perspective, they do think that it should be for all Black people. And I can understand, because, you know, when you look phenotypically, you experience certain types of discrimination and so forth, right? But our view is not just based on the discrimination that we feel. Ours is based on, and I told them that, you know, it's really from when we were emancipated, and I didn't have the eloquent words that you so put together, but now I'm understanding this. So when they, after emancipation, we have the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment, and that came through that whole Reconstruction. That was the direction that the country was supposed to go until we had Johnson rescind all of those things. So then it became a Reconstruction from 1868 to, you said, to 1963, on the Reconstruction to genocide the Negroes, the emancipated Negroes and their descendants from there on out, right? And then we had, from 1964 to present day, the ongoing genocide of the descendants of the emancipated Negroes, you know. So even though there are other people that are going to get caught up in that, it's still been the same direction that the country has gone. And, you know, even in the color of law, it talked about state-sponsored terrorism. You know, when we were living in communities, but, you know, we were trying to branch out, buy homes, and the segregation, it was all based on that class, of that lineage class, and not to, you know, help them in any kind of way, but to continue the genocide of these people. So if that's what I'm hearing and that's what I'm understanding, I can support that. It's just, I think more research is going to be done. I heard you say the 5 US presidents that were after the emancipation. So like getting words that were actually said out of their mouth, I think that would help, because that kind of like sets the tone of where the country is going. Because here they are saying that this is, you know, this is what our plan is, and, you know, and they're putting in policies to make sure that, you know, that is the direction that the country is going. So I just want to make sure I'm understanding that.
Yeah, that sounds good.
I think, Don, you're on mute if you're speaking.
Yes, that is precisely what's happened. We have, I mean, if you think about, one of the requirements is, you know, that you're able to prove intent. So just imagine that you have a series of presidents that basically talk about getting rid of the Negro problem. I'm looking because I actually have that, and I will play that, and you guys can. Decent way. So this is just a little. Roosevelt wrote that he had, quote, not been able to think out any solution to the terrible problem offered by the presence of the Negro on this continent. As for Indians, he said, quote, I don't go so far as to think that the only good Indians are the dead Indians, but I believe 9 out of 10 are, and I shouldn't inquire too closely into the health of the 10th. William Howard Taft once told a group of Black college students, your race is adapted to be a race of farmers, first, last, and for all times. Warren Harding thought the races would always be separate. Quote, this is not a question of social equality, but a question of recognizing a fundamental, eternal, inescapable difference. Harry Truman wrote, I am strongly of the opinion that Negroes ought to be in Africa, yellow men in Asia, and white men in Europe and America. He also referred to the Black servants in the White House as, quote, an army of coons. Dwight Eisenhower told Supreme Court Justice Earl Warren he understood why Southerners wanted segregated schools. They didn't want, quote, their sweet little girls to sit in schools alongside some big black box. He said that what he regretted most about his 8 years as president was sending federal troops to Little Rock, Arkansas to enforce school integration. It's not until John Kennedy, elected in 1960, that we have... And we don't care about John because she didn't say much either. So that's just a small demonstration. And I was looking for that clip, and then I realized that there was a whole book written. There are 2 books written, but the one that I actually got, they had an audio book. I don't know, that's to sound like the type I need to do in a group setting, but it goes through and systematically points out how each policy was targeted. I mean, our case, the case makes itself, literally, the case makes itself. So, yes, so there's plenty of more of fleshing out of this to do, Chitaki. But suffice it to say, you know, I just don't want to overwhelm. We'll talk about this again next week. But so yeah, Laredo, did you want to go?
Okay, hey everyone. Yeah, I just wanted to say is that the ethnocide aspect of this is very obvious because in all our history, even back to Jim Crow, it was the laws and everything was specifically targeting Black descendants of American slavery because even Malcolm X spoke of this. And then you had cases where there were obviously Black people such as Arthur Schomburg who sued for being discriminated against because they were trying to apply laws that were not against these individuals that were intended to be applied against Black Americans, but being that they were not themselves, they were able to win those cases. So what I was saying is what I'm really getting at now is that you mentioned the legality of slavery and that they could argue about that, but could they also argue that the case of, let's say, Jim Crow was legal during as well?
That's very interesting. That those were laws, and so yeah, no, they can't, because genocide addresses the illegal, you know, if those laws result in the fact that you're able to determine that you have an intent to get rid of a group. So the existence of a state or organizational plan or policy. Now, I bet everybody in this group can name 2 policies that were targeted at us, at least nationally, locally. So no, it's the impact of those, killing members of the group. So if you had policies that said, yes, let's get rid of all the political groups that are of this particular class, or let's make sure we don't invest any infrastructure in these neighborhoods for 20 years, so then we can start over policing them when they've deteriorated, and then there's no investment. Obviously that will result in lower births, or it will result in, you know, situations where children will be taken out of the home. So those laws that are found, that's what critical race theory proves. So that's why people don't want to see critical race theory, because critical race theory is approving of genocide. We are the critical race theory, us activists going out here and talking about this shit. We are the CRT. We don't need this in our school system. We need to be in our politicians' faces with this. But if you look at this, Chitaki, let's just look at this timeline. When did Africans of the modern day Africans get here? They weren't here 1492 to 1863. They weren't here in 1868, and they weren't here in 1963. So what is happening is that they are being mistaken for us. So that's where their allyship should come from. The fact that they are in danger because they are mistaken for us. And they can definitely mitigate that with a little accent if they so choose, or, you know, pulling out their licensure or whatever. That's not even our problem. The point is that the statistics, the data show that we are discriminated against everyone. We are bottom casted. If there's a bottom cast to be had, we're going to be there. If it's in scholarships for Black folks, Negroes are going to be at the bottom of that. Trust and believe. So it is indeed documented. There are surveys, corporate surveys about companies preferring Africans and Caribbeans over us Negroes. There are surveys from college admissions office showing that Africans and Caribbeans get in at 9% higher rates than we do, and so on and so forth. So we don't even need to talk about that. We need to talk about how you go through slavery, Jim Crow, redlining, the drug war, and then you pop up on 1980, and then all of a sudden, because people get pulled over by the police or their feelings hurt, that now they need reparations and they need free college. I don't think so. Because let's go back to this little, this little piece of information here that shows us, and we don't have to be, we don't even have to be nasty about it. We just have to show the facts that Africans and Caribbeans and every other, group essentially is doing better than us. Right here, 72,000 for the average African Caribbean, 4,000 for Black families, 592,000 in wealth for Japanese American, 408,200 for Chinese Americans. So this is why delineation and disaggregation are important. So it's not that we don't have empathy for other people in the diaspora. It's that that is going to harm our case. Laredo, did you have anything else? Because I'd like to give Dr. Jennings her moment for us to thank her.
Oh, no, that was practically all. I just wanted a little clarification on the meaning of legality. That's all.
All right. Well, with that, I would like to introduce Dr. Regina Jennings. As I said, Dr. Jennings is also a professor. I'm sorry I'm not up on your bio, but I do know the most important thing is that you are a highly respected elder, and we are so blessed to have you here. I feel like this is we've come full circle, that the Black liberation movement got off track by civil rights, and now we come full circle and rediscovered, the anti-genocide norm, and our understanding, really through our lineage, why it is, we are in such a horrible, horrible situation. And with that, I would like to turn it over to you, Dr. Jennings. Welcome.
Well, thank you, Dawn. It's a pleasure to be here. I always love to be with Black people who are activists. You see, the major organization that I joined when I was a teenager, the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense, it wasn't even an issue of some of the principles that Dawn and even the other two speakers, questioners had about the differences between genocide and ethnocide, which I had never really thought that much about ethnocide because genocide was so obvious to us. And we were following Malcolm X. And so we knew that, we charged genocide existed, in book form. Paul Robeson and a gentleman named, I forgot his first name, but Patterson was his last name. They, put together a document to take before the UN. And so we functioned as a group that understood that Black problems could only be solved by Black people. We didn't even think about any kind of multiculturalism, any kind of, other than Black people joining our organization. And at the time, there wasn't even the thought of, a Caribbean Black Panther, or now there were Black Panthers that formed their own groups in the Caribbean and even in Polynesia. Can you imagine that? But our group here in Americas was for Black Americans. And so we knew that we had to solve our own problems, and the racism was so very thick and vibrant and historical that we decided, I'm saying we, but it was really Huey P. Newton and Bobby G. Seale that put together our 10-point platform and program, and then went out into the community, as I'm kind of hearing from some of you, and we sold our program to our people, you see? And so what they did, of course, was to study the gun laws. It was legal at the time to carry, especially as long as it was displayed up front. Now, this use of guns back then certainly wasn't to do any harm to our people, but these use of firearms were to patrol the police, because it was the police that were coming into our neighborhoods, shooting up whoever they wanted to, torturing whoever they chose to, raping whoever they chose to. I mean, they were just lawless and criminals. And the only way to stop that kind of action, Bobby and Huey and others agreed, was to confront the police forthrightly. So that's exactly what they did. And, we did get good results. I mean, because when the police turned around and saw armed Black men and some women in those early days, they would back up. Understand that. They backed up. Now, the books that Dawn mentioned, about the presidents and slavery. Like I'm reading Margaret Kimberly's book right now. It's called Prejudential. And she puts together a compilation of all the presidents and how
That's the book, Dr. Jennings. That's the book.
Margaret, isn't she brilliant? I love that woman.
I haven't gotten it yet, but yes, that's what I'm talking about.
Yes, it's a wonderful book for you guys in particular, because I could see from Dawn's presentation, you all are really getting into the weeds of things about how we can, in the 21st century, approach legislators to demand reparations, because we should have been at them, you know, but I won't go into that. But we should have been at them, because the work that we did in the 1960s and 70s set the platform for every Black political leader that you see in any position of power right now. But those bastards that got into power, you see, all they pretty much wanted to do was immolate white America. So they turned their back on the movement that forced open the doors. The doors were never open to us. We forced those doors open, you know? They had to deal with us. Why? Because we were willing to die for Black people. To become a Panther, to go through that orientation, our section leaders told us repeatedly and up front, now look, if you're really going to do this, understand it, you might go to jail, you might be killed, but also you may live, which I did, and I'm happy to be here, okay? But we knew this because we also knew what Harriet Tubman knew. It's got to be liberty or death, okay? You can't play with these people. Now, I don't absolutely collectively believe what Elijah Muhammad said when he said the white man is the devil, but he had a really good point. Because if you look at white history, these people are as demonic as anyone could be, okay? I mean, not only what they did to Black people, all you have to do, since we're living in the Americas, is look at what they did to the Native Americans. I mean, those red nations, it was millions of them. Millions. Well, they were slaughtered. And they fought to the death. They were only slaughtered because white people had studied war since they've been on the planet. That's what they do. That's what they're doing right now in the Ukraine. Those weapons that they're sending over there is to weaken Russia. Because this is something that I just learned very recently, because I started reading books on Russia, because I was like, what's up with all this? You know, dig. Russians are not fully white. That's why the Nazis hate them. Russians have a strain of Asian in them. And that's why Europeans, the European Union, despise them as well. Anybody who has any color, and you know, we got the most color, okay, are considered, well, they lie and say they're inferior, they're savage. No, they fear a Black planet, like Chuck D said. There's great fear of Black people. Why? Because we can annihilate them. We can annihilate them, and they know it. But to bring it back to this wonderful discussion, with the attitude that we had as members of the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense, we relied on only Black people. Yes, we did. And what started to happen? White people wanted to help us. Now, what we would do with these certain white people, right? We might make alliances, but they could not be in our group. Not ever. And I think that that's very important.
What about interracial relationships?
Well, when you say interracial relationship, which kind do you mean?
All right, well, hey, it's the 21st century. Let's go with white, and then let's go with African. African or Caribbean. I just want to
Oh,
hear.
but I mean, which kind? Do you mean interracial couples?
Marriage.
Do you mean interracial organizations? What do you mean?
Someone involved in interracial marriage.
Interracial marriage is
In
something
the,
we
yeah.
didn't we were following Malcolm X, especially early Malcolm X. So it wasn't something that we promoted. Now I will tell you this, of course, there were interracial couples who wanted to be involved in our organization. And that, like I said, if you were white, you could not join, but we certainly did take your money because we needed it. Why did we need it? We had to get our people out of jail, and Black people were not always forthcoming with monies to do that. And in fact, on that particular subject, let me just look. Have all of you heard of Assata Shakur?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
All right, very good. Dig.
Yeah, everyone.
On that New Jersey Turnpike, there was a brother with her, you know, Sundiata Acoli. Do you understand that Sundiata Acoli just got out of jail and he's in his 80s? He's in his fucking 80s. Excuse me. I'm sorry.
That's cool. Yeah, that's cool.
We
I-
appreciate that.
Encouraged person.
We did everything possible to get our political and still are to get our political prisoners out of jail. Okay, and our people again weren't always, forthcoming with the resources that we needed. If white people had the resources that we needed, we used them. Yes, we did. But as far as a promotion of interracial coupling, no, it wasn't something that we promoted. And I really, want you all to understand this too. We were faced with so many issues of life and death. You dig? I mean, there were mothers in the Black Panther Party that had to go underground. Well, who was going to take care of their children? We had to have people who would, and all of this had to be done on the down low. And all of this was done among us.
Dr. Jennings, I don't think we have, like the more I listen to you, and this is only the second time we talk, we'll talk about slavery. That's triggering. We'll talk about, kind of abstractly about the Jim Crow era.
Sure.
I would like to change more to the way we're talking about it now. But we don't appreciate what you were dealing with, what we were dealing with in the 60s. And when I hear you talk about just the police, like you said, being lawless, we have no concept of that. And that is a part of the ethnocide about, not even being, we don't even know our own current present day history. And that's why when we do our lineage, that walks us through history. And we see the things that happen, what our people own and didn't. When you look at doing your ancestry and lineage through those lenses, the story of America kind of comes together. I wanted you to talk about how you feel about the current day organizations and their lack of response or what you
I feel terrible about the current day so-called organization.
Yeah, I'd like to put some context because people get the impression, and maybe even some among us might feel that, the way we are dealing with the so-called establishment and our reaction, this clutch of people, that the way we're acting is something brand new. And what I want you to help us understand, you've given us a little taste of the lawlessness. I want you to, if you could share also the story about the breakfast program and what happened.
Sure.
And tying in.
Sure.
Like I do want to continue to harken back on this food distribution.
Well, one of the things that once again, I really want to emphasize that we thought only of Black people doing for Black people, not Black people writing a grant, not that that's a bad thing, but not Black people, you know, writing a book, not Black people just giving a talk. I always say we, but you know, I was a follower. I mean, I was rank and file. I wasn't a leader, right? But anyway, in particular, Bobby Seale he looked at the community, knew our children were going to school hungry. Now understand, you young people live in a time where many of these schools, they have a breakfast, they have a lunch program, yada, yada. That didn't exist. Bobby Seale's genius taught our captains, and our captains taught us, look, whatever neighborhood you're in, every neighborhood has a store or stores. We were to go to those stores, tell the manager that we were members of the Black Panther Party for self-defense, okay? And say to the manager, we are starting a breakfast program for our Black children, and we want you to donate for free food that you do not sell close to the I guess the
shelf life.
The shelf life. Thank you. So I want you guys to imagine white managers of these grocery stores and supermarkets looking at a group of young Black Panthers, and we all had on our uniform, and whether we were carrying or not, we looked and acted like we were. So when we presented very nicely, normally these managers would say, okay, all right, if you come every Thursday at whatever time, you can have, you know, we got the eggs, the sausage, the grits, the bread, butter, this sort of thing. We did this. We didn't ask any politician for anything. We just did it, you know. Then our leaders got with some of the churches and said, we want to feed hungry children. Well, if you're any kind of a church, you're going to say, okay. And of course, these were Black churches, you know. We started with Father Neil's church, which was just marvelous. But the point that I really want to emphasize here is that we did this ourselves, for ourselves. And because the breakfast program spread out of Oakland and San Fran and Berkeley and, you know, into Chicago and New York, wherever Panther branches were, you had to have a breakfast program. Now this wasn't even our purpose. Our purpose was to feed Black kids, you dig? That was our purpose. But the government looked at what we were doing. They were so ashamed and they wanted to shut us down. First, let me tell you what those rotten pig dogs did. Some of them, of course, they got our schedules as to when we would pick up the food. So some of them would get there earlier, get the food that was legislated for us. I mean, they cops, boom. And then they pee all over the food. You know what I'm saying?
You got to be kidding me.
No, I ain't kidding you. No. So then what we gonna do? We gotta feed the kids. The kids are coming the next day. And it wasn't even just the children we were feeding. Do you know that their parents came to get some food too? So we had to get food. And we got it. I won't go into how we got it, but we got the food. Because the most important thing to us was feeding those children. And we also wanted to let them children know we would not let them down. They weren't going to come to no empty church or church empty of food when they expected to eat. So we got that food by any means necessary. And that's what we did. Now, because our enterprise was so very successful, that's when white folks said, okay, well, let's have a breakfast program at the schools. Let's do that. And they did that. They didn't do that out of any altruistic moment that they had. They did that because they wanted to stop the momentum of the Black Panther Party for self-defense. Understand that. Okay, so, but what we did, we kept doing what we were doing, but we were glad that the schools were taking over some of that task. Why? Because look, our people being framed, going to jail. We had Black agent provocateurs all in just about every office. If any of you guys and sisters saw the movie on Fred Hampton, The Black Messiah, Judas and the Black Messiah, which many of us didn't really like because they paid too much attention to the pig and not to the panther. But nevertheless, young people learned about the great Fred Hampton. We are still trying to figure out how Fred Hampton was feeding over 1,000 kids a week. Now we couldn't even make that number of kids, but Fred did. Fred did. So, when the establishment schools did take over that program, they didn't really take it over, but they included it. We were happy about that because the main thing was that our children were being fed and their parents or parent was making so little money, even if they were. Look, y'all, I'm sure y'all heard the term, the working poor. That's disgusting in this land of such wealth. But in any event, all we cared about was getting our children fed. And that's what we did.
So much.
All right. Let me ask you, I want to ask you, okay, I want to pin one question. So I do want to ask you what you feel you did, not because we also need to understand how young they were. They were like on average 10 to 15 years younger than all of us on this call. So I'm not even going to ask the next question, which was about policy, because as you said, y'all were fighting for your lives. Yes, now, let me ask you, you see what's going on today with the violence. So our kids are starving. Are they also out here killing each other?
That's right.
Khalif Alexander's in Philadelphia, and he just unfortunately suffered a loss in this recent tragedy. And he's a trooper here, but we normalize tragedy like that. And so here he sits. What would Fred Hampton do? What is the fix? Our kids are hungry still. So sure, but we can't go out and just have a breakfast food program.
Why not? Why can't you?
No, I'm sorry. That's a bad analogy.
Yeah, that's a very bad. Because
all right.
You see,
so what I want to
we did. Wait a minute, Dawn. What we did, and this is what I want everybody on this.
I want you to apply that to the violence. That's what I was trying to do. It was very clumsy, so ignore that.
Okay, no, but that's what I want when I talk to young people. I always want you to know this, and I'll get to your question in a minute, Dawn, I promise you. The Black Panther Party for Self-Defense started with 2 brothers, that's it, 2. Fred Hampton didn't exist, none of that. I didn't, it was just 2 brothers who looked at the problems that Black people were having. They put together a 10-point platform and program, not even as fabulously as Dawn just presented, her PowerPoint presentation. You see, we didn't even have that technology. They put together that program. They went out into the community, like I've been listening, since we've been together here today. Many of you are doing that. As they went out into the community, and of course they had their beret and their black leather jacket. So more than likely, young people looking up at them and seeing strong Black men. Strong Black men. Strong Black men. Okay? They then wanted to emulate the brothers that they saw. So I think that's very key. Now, let me swing this back around to Dawn's very frustrating question, because I agonize over this every day, Dawn, and that's no joke. In fact, I meditate the minute I wake up in the morning, and I meditate before I go to bed, because The situation that we're in now, it is unlike anything that I've ever quite seen. And let me just say this to you too. I'm not sure, and I can't really prove this, but I'm not sure this is just these young Black men just killing each other. I'm not sure. You mentioned food. I can't remember his name. Well, I can't remember his name, but let me just say this. Robert Kennedy Jr. Do y'all know his story? Do you know his story, Dawn? All right, let me give it to you.
Yes.
Years ago, he went to Farrakhan because, Farrakhan's the only one on the scene. I'm not a Farrakhan lover. I don't mean to, I'm sorry. I'm not. Anyway, he helped kill Malcolm. That's another story, another issue. Now, look here. Robert Kennedy Jr. went to Farrakhan, okay? And this is what he said. This is over 10, 15 years ago. He said, Farrakhan, they're putting chemicals in the food that goes into Black communities, and these chemicals are geared to neuter Black men. Now you go to the Farrakhan's website, that stuff is still on there. Yes, and he went to Farrakhan because, like I said, Farrakhan was the most visible Black leader, for the last 20 years or so, because your really good Black leaders were locked down and in jail, like Sundiata Acoli I just mentioned. But in any event, so as I'm looking at what these kids are doing here, I'm in Philly, all this killing, Philly, Chicago, New York, young Black men, we got a problem. And that problem might just be within one of Dawn's concerns about food.
Oh my God, I'm screaming.
About food. I'm sorry. This is fucking real. And I'm telling you, because look, we've always had, young Black men. Look, when a brother shoot another brother, normally it's one-on-one, and maybe even the gangs, because I used to run with gangs when I was like 10, 11, 12. The gangs would come out, do they little fight. We used to, I was just watching from the sidelines. But anyway, they would break off car aerials. I don't even think they have aerials today. Anyway, they break off car aerials, do their little fighting, maybe slash somebody, and they go home. They went home. We didn't kill each other. Okay? Even if somebody might have had a gun, that gun was not for killing your brother. It just was not. So, fast forward from the 60s, I'm talking the 60s now, and you come into a brand new century in 2022, and brothers are killing each other at the amount and the rate and the viciousness, drive-bys and all that shit. Excuse me. We did not. These are very new issues. And let me just say this to you too, because I've been studying this as well. The FBI and the CIA, since the early 20th century, probably around 1914 into the 1920s, those bastards have been studying biological warfare. Yes, I'm gonna try to remember the name of the books because they're escaping me right now. But the point is, y'all, just take my word for it. I don't talk. This ain't a conversation here. All right, I'm talking what I know. Now, and they were also studying climate, how to control the weather. Now, if those demonic folk have been doing this since the early 20th century, where do you think they are with that right now? Just, where in the world do you think they are with this right now? Is there a way to just target Black babies? Yes. And let me tell you why I absolutely know that this is true. During the coronavirus, all right, we just had that, so all of us are familiar with it. Cynthia McKinney is a great Black woman. They threw her ass out of Congress. She was the only one that stood up to George Bush and Donald Rumsfeld. So, they railroaded her out of Congress. And by the way, the Black Congress, Black Congress people didn't support her. Here we go. I'm just being real. I'm just being real. Hurts me to say this, but they didn't, because they should have fought for her to stay in Congress. Now, let me get to my point. I read her book. I think, yeah, it's called When China Sneezes. It's all about COVID. She pulled together all of these doctors, researchers, and all of this on biological warfare. Two of these I don't even think they were Black. I don't know what they were. You know what I mean? They were doctors. They give you in that book. It's called When China Sneezes. Okay, and I'm repeating the title. Why? Because Amazon didn't want to sell it. Now they do sell it, but it'll take you a year to get the sucker. All right, but I want y'all to, you know, those of you who are into the, get her book. These doctors show, okay, in charts and in analysis that yes, they can make a chemical that might get Dawn but not get Regina, okay, that might get Amaru but not get, what was her name, Chiquita, but y'all get my drift here. You know, I'm new. Anyway, okay, so they can do this, people. They can do this. Now, if they could do this, why would we ever think that they would not target Black people with biological warfare? It's very easy to do. Black people live in, you know, conclaves. We live with each other as we should. I ain't saying let's not do that, but you know, they can go by zip code. You see? And Dick Gregory even talked about some of this. So food, Dawn mentioned food. Yeah, food can be a weapon. Either the lack of or food that has been doctored.
Oh my goodness.
I'm sorry. Listen here. Look at y'all.
Of food
Regina,
being a weapon.
I take myself and other people, we go out to the suburbs where the white, or me and where the white folks are. Yes. And buy food. And I'm trying to grow my own. I'm not very good. And the squirrels are just eating every damn thing. But I'm gonna learn. But what is my point? My basic point is this. Every way that they could reduce the Black population, these people have and are doing. Now, we all see the police shootings. We'll never get over George Floyd, you know, never will. That'll be forever. How about Trayvon Martin? How about Trayvon Martin? I got a big portrait of Trayvon Martin in my home because I never want to forget that 17-year-old baby who was on the phone with one of his girlfriends, you know, friend girl, you know what I mean, with candy in his pocket. And he was shot, and you mean to tell me Zimmerman is sitting home right now? Nah, blood. That's what we used to call it in the 60s, blood. Nah, This is wrong. And see, when other races, and especially the demonic one, see us sitting back, letting this happen. One of my friends called me up, because I got all kind of friends. Some smart, some not so smart, some much smarter than me. Well, one of my not so smart friends called me up and said, well, you know, Charles Barkley. I said, don't you even mention that bastard's name to me. I heard Charles Barkley. I don't care who, I don't care how many balls he dunked. Well, he wasn't really a dunker that way, but y'all get my drift. Charles Barkley literally, publicly said that George Zimmerman should be, this is when everything was going on, he was going to trial, should be let off because, yeah, he might have stalked the boy. These are my words. But once he found him, I think the dynamics changed. Let me tell you something. Charles Barkley is a disgrace. A disgrace. Trayvon Martin was a baby. He was 17 and he was stalked, and all of us heard it. We were all listening to that phone call where even the 911 people said, do not go after him. They said it. And what did he say? They always get away with something. They always get away with something. All right. And if you looked at the footage of when Zimmerman, I'm not even gonna say his name, when the killer of Trayvon Martin, after he killed Trayvon Martin, did you notice how the police just lollygagged? Hi, dude, hi, you know, let him walk on, you know, took him on down, everything was cool. They weren't even going to charge him. And then the ordinary happened. He come Al Sharpton and they march and they sing and they, fuck that. What's wrong with you people? That is terrible what I just said, so scratch that. But my point is this. Black men in particular are not standing up in the way that they must to take on these problems. Now, we can help. Don't get me wrong. We can certainly help. But the killings of young Black men to young Black men, that is a Black male problem. And the only group that can fix that are older Black men. And I'm not even talking about elders. I just mean more mature Black men than these youngsters with these guns that if you wear the wrong colors or you know, go with the wrong girl, you're gonna meet your death. These kids are young. They're growing up in white America, because this is still white America. And they're taking on the American values. Aren't we sending every dollar and every weapon that we have to the Ukraine? And didn't we just get out of Afghanistan? And check this out. Right now, America is bombing Somalia, you know, like on the African continent. They're bombing Mali. They're bombing the Syrians. Okay. They're bombing the Yemenis. Okay. You already know that the first biracial president bombed Libya, a Black country. So youth are growing up in this atmosphere where all they see is war, and war is glamorized. I can barely look at movies that come out now because they're so ridiculous to me. You know, the gun is glorified. These babies that are killing each other on these urban streets are only emulating what they see in the predominant culture. That's it. And then on our part, and I've heard this from parents, yes, I have, what I'm about to say, they will say to me, well, you know, we didn't want to tell them, you know, talking about their children, we didn't want to tell them about all that ever happened. That's wrong. Those of you within the sound of my voice, tell your children the history of this country, all of it, all of it. They should know about the lynchings. They should know about the rapings. They should know. Look, I have read just about every slave narrative that's ever been written. Some of them slave narratives have just made me cry for a week before I could even deal with teaching it or just ingesting it. Why? Look, some of them butchers that owned us, all right, let's say, you know, one of us wanted to run away. Laredo wanted to run away. He did. All right, well, he didn't get real far. Okay, they bring him back to the plantation. Do you know some of those dogs that owned us would give an axe to Laredo's son and say, cut off his foot? Now, Laredo's son is like, if you don't cut off his foot, we're going to cut off yours. I ain't even going to tell you how these stories end. Look at the trauma that Laredo's son is going through, okay? And also his father, seeing his father in that pitiful state where his father is a victim. This is our history. Now, let me just really even bring this forward. One of my latest books is called Poetry of the Black Panther Party, from ancestral memory, morphogenetic fields to hip hop. Now, morphogenetic fields is quantum physics. I studied Einstein's theory to write this. All right, Panthers wrote poetry. So I wanted to explain Panther poetry through ancestral memory, to go back to Africa where writing first started, because we were the first people. Okay. And I wanted to explain it also through science. In quantum physics, morphogenetic fields, they have proved that the past is in the present. The past is in the present. It is scientifically in the present. Every time we breathe, we're breathing in air from the past. That's been proven by the white man's science. Now, our ancestors knew this years ago. They knew this. This is why they venerated their ancestors. This is why they leave a little food for their ancestors. Okay, they knew the ancestors wasn't going to walk back into the physical plane, but that was their way of acknowledging, okay, that spirit of their ancestors. Okay, well, that's been proven by quantum physics. So what am I saying here? How does this all come together? What we suffered during, this is why reparations is so important. What we suffered back then is still with us. So those boys that are ready to pull the trigger, okay? Yeah, they're carrying some of the trauma of having had to make decisions that were absolutely unconscionable. And understand this, that little boy that was given the axe to chop off his father's foot, where does that angst go? What could that kid do? And worst of all, he's seeing his father, who is y'all who are fathers or will be, your children will look up to you like you're gods. Trust me, I've raised children of my own and other people's children. When they are of a certain age, you're everything to them, just everything. Now, that kid is looking at his father, who can't do anything against this white man, nothing. It's not his father's fault, but he can't do anything to help his son. He can't do anything to this white man. So the kind of inferiority complex that comes from that period that we were never compensated for, okay, is still with us today. And young Black men also know this. There have been Black men who have sold, not Black men, other young Black men who have sold out other young Black boys, not men. They know it's in us. And let me even be even more real and more clear here. White men are not gods. They didn't come to the African continent and just tear it up and bring us here. Black tribes or Black ethnic groups, I don't even use the word tribe. There were some Black ethnic groups on the continent who were terrible. They went into many of the villages and they stole some of them people and sold them to the Portuguese, the Dutch, the Spanish, the French, the English, whatever. Okay? So we have the trauma of being sold out by our own people. And of course, we are carrying the trauma of being owned by some of the most demonic people in the world, because that's what they are. I'm not saying all of them, I'm just saying, you look at the history of white folks. It's a history of war. It's a history of conquering. Look here, another one of my friends, not the smartest, but she's my friend. Well, did you see the Jubilee for the Queen? Let me tell you about the Queen of England. Her ancestry goes back to the German hordes. The German hordes went over there and beheaded people, took apart the monasteries, and made themselves the royalty. That's their descendants. you know, and we looking up to these people like yeah. All the wealth that they got is stolen from the darker races on earth. Yeah, they owe us. They owe us more than we can ever even imagine that they owe us. Okay? And let me even bring it, I'm gonna get you, Dawn, but I'm on the roll. Give me another minute. Let me bring it even full circle. Why do you think they after Vladimir Putin? They after Putin because Russia has become a force that they didn't plan on. They looked at Russia as the hillbillies of Europe. And that's the truth. But Putin took it into another direction and expanded it. They want to stop his power. I'm sure all of you, I don't look at mainstream news. I look at news on other places, big. But I know all of you have heard that, well, you know, we need fertilizer. We can't get fertilizer. I know many of you didn't realize how much we have been getting, the United States and Europeans have been getting from Russia. Okay? He built that country up, and the United States does not want competition. That's in their Monroe Doctrine. They don't want competition of any kind. They will kill their competition. That's why they're even telling you to hate China right now. Why? Because China did even better than what Russia has done with their own population. Okay, I'm done.
I was writing that Russia is not that large of an economy. And the other thing I was going to say is that about that situation, I don't know. But I wanted to take it back, like you said, to, you know, because I was having a conversation with Khalif earlier today about what happened in Philadelphia. Yes. And like I said, why it's so important to look at what's going on through the lens of genocide is because now they have us groomed and compartmentalizing these things and analyzing each, you know, individual situation when it should really be looked at through that timeline, right, through that long lens. And when we layer over, you know, the conditions that we've been put in, I said, you know, as we have this conversation, that's part of it. You know, we're put into this psychological dynamic and framework where we can even find our own selves race hating. Yes. And saying, oh, well, maybe that faction of us is hopeless. Those people are poor among us. Maybe they shouldn't have children. So yeah, let's put a Planned Parenthood there. That's right. You know how we're groomed into participation in our own genocide, and we are exhausted. And we think we start to agree, like with the Sangers, the eugenicists, that there's an element among us that is does not hold value because of their socioeconomic status. And that was associated with us. You know, they took that and they associated that with us. And so we have to be careful of that, I guess is what I was saying. And also to bring that back to how I came to Dr. Jennings is because she had written a piece like that. She might have smoked a blunt or something before she wrote it. But she was talking about how, you know, like the use of the words, but she was talking about how, but really what she's talking, because it was pretty deep, and I do think she had probably smoked a blunt. And I think this is what she was going for. I think she was trying to say how we participate. That's part of our genocide and how we participate. She did say in this article how we talk about ourselves, how we participate in objectifying ourselves. It's like we even become part of the studiers of ourselves. Mm-hmm. So that is why I got in touch with Dr. Jennings, because I felt like, you know, we needed that element. But then I got the bonus of her being, you know, a true elder, not just older than us, but a true elder. But not only that, a true soldier And she has so much to offer us. She's also a professor, so you can tell she can speak. We were all enraptured. I know I was. But to also bring that back to the food thing and how, like you said, and I hadn't thought about the weaponization of food, not just the absence thereof in the I don't know if it's Consuelo Mona was saying, she works in nutrition. She said, please call it food apartheid and call them food swamps, not food deserts. But when we say swamps, so yeah, that hits on what you're saying. The chemical, we're thinking biowarfare where we're going to be walking around in hazard suits and they're going to come and drop, orange bombs, dust bombs. But what you're saying or what you're clicking here is like, no, just like they urinated on the food.
Yes.
They're fucking like pumping chemicals into the fast food outlets and the corner stores are so readily available. That's just chilling and fascinating. And I'm just glad that you're here, like I said, to put this historical framework, because present day media, like she was trying to point out in her article, plays a part, participates. Look at how the stories are presenting, how after something happens to us, I know these shootings are happening with high frequency across all, but the way they're reported, when something happens to us, it's a little more amplified, then all of a sudden they're hyping up all of these other events. And I'm not saying that they're being done on purpose. I'm saying the way, and this is what Dr. Jennings was talking about, all of this is part of the grooming. And we cannot compartmentalize anymore. Everything has to be, we have to scream bloody murder. We have to scream genocide from the top of our lungs. Dr. Jennings, I have got to get you to talk about Cobra, your thoughts on them, Pan-Africanism, and please, I'm not going to prompt anymore, but I told you that there had been some legislation introduced, a reparations study in New York, in New Jersey, in New York, in Cobra, and Ron Daniels by name were both written into these pieces of legislation. In both states, the legislation was introduced by immigrants, Black immigrants, and one of them even went so far to say is that people who are a member of a grassroots organization that lean on lineage-based reparations are essentially a hate group, crazy, because they believe. So yeah, I'd like you to comment on that, how you feel about specificity, lineage.
Okay, I'm going to make this real short because I have to go. But I don't appreciate Ron Daniels and whoever his cohorts are by doing that. And in fact, God is good. I believe in, I'm not any religion, but I definitely believe. I had just, and I think I mentioned this to you, Dawn, and the other good sister that was on when we talked, last week or so, or was it last? Anyway, what I mean. Our conversation. Look, I had just been in a conversation with someone who was, and she was probably talking down your group. See, I didn't know your group.
We are not part, let me say, we are not part of the hashtag group ADOS.
Okay, well, no, it wasn't them, because I know them. No, it definitely wasn't. But she was just talking, about, generally speaking, and I knew nothing about you guys. But generally speaking, she was like, well, these groups that are coming along, they're not paying homage to Cobra, and they have no respect for their elders. I said, well, what has Cobra done in all these years? I mean, how long is it going to take? Huh? I mean, anyway, we had a big discussion like that, and I ended with this. I said, look, if there are new groups coming up, good. I said, what? Oh, and this person, a little younger than me, but within my age range. And I said, we supposed to be helping the young since we're still on earth. I said, I got a big problem with Cobra. Yes, I do. Because all the decades that they've been in existence, and we don't have any other kind of we don't have one piece of legislation that they've gotten through. Okay, and I see again, when I talk about my beloved political prisoners and all like this, look, white folks, white radicals that burnt down buildings and shit, they were able to come home because those white people made sure they came home. Why can't Asada come home, motherfuckers? Excuse me. Anyway, these groups that been here and got a little piece of money or whatever, even if they don't have a little piece of money, they ain't never said anything about the political prisoners. They ain't said anything about, you get my drift. So I don't just hate them, but I have not seen the kind of results that I think that I should have seen in all of these decades of their existence. So before I even knew about you, Dawn, before I even knew about what y'all call concerned Black Americans, whatever your title is.
But we are reparationists.
I never, before I even knew about y'all, in fact, it made me happy. I said, oh, there's young groups dealing with this? Good. Because I'm assuming, and from your presentation, I could see that I'm right. You guys and girls, you got the technology, you got the youth, you got all that we have done before you all. Y'all can wrap that into something and we can move this ship forward, because that's all I care about. I don't care about old groups and whatever. I do care about new groups, because in the African tradition, we are supposed to be there for you all. We're not supposed to sit back and say, well, they didn't kiss my ring or they didn't kiss my feet. That's not the African way. And I done studied ancient African civilizations, so I know what I'm saying here. And that's what we need. Well, brothers and sisters, I have to go. It was a pleasure to be here with you, and I'll be back anytime that I can. And anything that you all think that I could do to help your movement go forward, you just, Dawn has all my information.
So blessed to have had you here. If anybody else wants to give us a shout out of praise for Dr. Jennings.
I do. Dr. Jennings, I've had the pleasure of being in the
Malcolm Flowers.
Yes, I've had the pleasure of being in the Malcolm X rooms with you and hearing you speak. I'm so delighted that you are on this call today with us. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, sweetheart. I need all the love I can get. Thank you.
Oh, we got plenty of
love and positive energy. More of that. Yes.
Mm-hmm. I also want to say thank you as well. That was very informative. And thank you for your work in the past. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, sister. Thank you.
Yes, it is quite immeasurable.
Thank you, Tramel. Thank you. Yes, and we will meet again.
Yeah, I definitely plan on having you come back for our Amaru said, please tell you thank you for him. But we will definitely have you back. We meet every Sunday at 4. We won't press you to come every Sunday, but I do want you to consider yourself part of our organizing circle now, because I think we are just so lucky to have you as an advisor now. I mean, I got questions, but thank you so much. And maybe we'll meet Bobby Seale one day. Maybe
I just talked to Bobby. Bobby, he'd be glad to talk to you.
Oh my God!
Let me just say this. Do you understand that Huey Newton and Bobby Seale could not get a fucking job? It's not even like they were going out looking for one. And are you going to tell me that all these rotten ass, low-life, so-called Black leaders couldn't throw them some goddamn money so that they could pay their house or take care of their goddamn kids? I'm sorry.
Well, you know what? Everything happens for a reason.
I mean, this is just outrageous to me. But go ahead with you. I'm still here. Go ahead with the question. What's your question?
I was saying, I have a question, and I always say this on the Clubhouse spaces, because anybody who know me, they know that protect the class, that's my baby. And I think that's the one thing that the civil rights movement missed the mark on. And I could not understand and still can't understand for the life of me how during the civil rights movement, we were fighting things like Mississippi burning and people were being hung from trees and ethnic genocide was going on, you know, everywhere. And they did not put protected class in the writing in the civil rights movement. I could not understand that.
Mm-hmm.
Also today, the Emmett Till anti-lynching law has no teeth. It's a
Of course.
joke. The
I
one
know.
that Bobby Rush did is a half a
Hey,
page.
we isolated Bobby Rush decades ago, sis. Know that. Go ahead.
Oh, wow. So I was just asking you, why do you think that this part of the movement was skipped over?
Because the last thing that America wants to see is strong Black men and women standing up saying, fuck you, motherfucker. We come for what's ours. And that's what we used to say. We did not play, my dear. There was no just empty oratory. We were ready to go to war. Okay? Yes. So America does not want to see that kind of revolutionary action again. And they've done everything that they possibly could to make sure that it didn't happen. That's where we are. So I am going to go now because I got another commitment, but I will be back. That I promise you.
Thank you so much. And we will have much more love waiting for you. And we're looking forward to your book coming out. So we got a lot.
Oh, yeah. Now I got books selling on Amazon. Just put my name in there.
There's we got a lot planned for you. Maybe a room on Clubhouse, and maybe you can do the reading since you don't have audio, but we can have you read a chapter and discuss.
I'd love to.
All right, then. And we put your Cash App in the bio.
Yes, I will. Okay.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Jennings. We'll see you soon.
All right.
All right. That was great. Wow. That was exponentially better than anything I could have ever hoped and dreamed for. Wow. Power to the people.
That was freaking amazing. Oh my God.
Y'all, we gonna be seeing Bobby Seale and Dr. Jennings on one call soon. That's her buddy. We've like reconnected with the ancestors here, with our true elders of the movement, not the coons. Not all boomers are coons. I'm so, I don't know, optimistic. I want to give a little space here. Let's be quiet. And then once we're ready, we'll let Khalif launch into just a little diatribe about what Juneteenth is.
Miss Dawn, before not to interrupt anybody, but is there, I see records on because Tramiel said that that conversation almost had the brother in tears. So I just want to, how do we get a hold of the recording? Pretty much, because I want to hear it.
Send it to him.
That was a figure.
Yeah, I'm gonna post it online. I think everything's cool. That I told you that there were issues in the video last time that prevented me from publishing it. This I think it'll be good. So anyway, you'll have it. I'll load it. But yeah, that was fun.
Awesome. And in Tramel's defense, it was a figure of speech. I heard you, brother.
Yeah, because we keep it gangster.
Yeah, gangster as hell. I get it.
I'm dead. I'm tired of y'all. All right, Khalif.
All right, cool. Hold on.
Do y'all see this? I just threw this up. If you need to share, that's fine. I can unshare.
Peace. What's going on, y'all? So, as we see, we all know that Juneteenth is coming up soon. Juneteenth is something that is very special to my heart. As you can see, I got my Juneteenth shirt on that I made. If y'all want to cop up, let me know. But Juneteenth is something that's special to my heart, near and dear. And I just want to go on and just talk about like, you know, some of the developments and how things became what they were, well, became what they are, and kind of how what we have to do moving forward in this Juneteenth fight. So pretty much, I always like to give people the information on the National Juneteenth Observance Foundation. They had the group in 1994 who all came together in regards to Juneteenth. A couple different pastors, activists, various different people like that. Somebody mute. But yeah, the various different individuals, whatever the case may be, they came together for Juneteenth. And it started in 1980 when the first state, which was Texas, they declared Juneteenth a state holiday. So from 1980 to 2017, 47 states declared Juneteenth as a state holiday. In 1992, an elder of mine by the name of Ron Brown, he first started to discover Juneteenth and just the Reconstruction era and all of these different types of things. He studied for 2 to 3 years in developing and learning and all of this different stuff. And he wound up meeting with these different people who were in the Juneteenth movement, if you will. And believe it or not, all of these people at that time, they were all fighting for reparations. They were all somewhat connected with N'COBRA because they thought that N'COBRA was true, which is ironic, right? But nonetheless, Ron Brown, he threw the first Juneteenth in Philadelphia history in 1996, coincidentally the year that I was born. And ever since then, Juneteenth has been a big thing in Philly. A lot of people just think that Juneteenth is big in the South, which is funny, but, you know, it's just, you know, that's kind of like the genesis of it. And why we even utilize Philadelphia is one of the main places because the soldiers from Philadelphia and New York, they had an infantry that wound up teaming up together. And that infantry was the same infantry who basically made Robert E. Lee surrender to them. And then that's also the same infantry that traveled to Galveston, Texas with General Granger. So that's the background on that aspect. Now, in regards to modern day Juneteenth, it's just modern times because a lot of people always want to figure out, well, how do you celebrate Juneteenth and different things of that nature? But first and foremost, we all know in this chat that we all have to utilize the correct flag, the flag in which was created by Ben Haif. And the symbols we can all understand, you know, we see it here, but just to give a quick breakdown, like that star, that representation is us being a star, Black Americans all around the country. Some people think that the star is just symbolic to Texas, but it's symbolic to all of the states in the United States of America. And that star represents us. And again, the colors, we know the colors are red, white, and blue because we want to, Ben Haif, his goal was to get a flag that would utilize the United States colors. So again, when we start talking about Juneteenth in modern times, how do we celebrate it? You know, it started off as this Juneteenth Jubilee Festival. That's what it was originally called. And I'm not sure if many of you know what a Jubilee is, but a Jubilee was a spiritual ritual that Christians back in the old world, they used to do. Now you see Queen Elizabeth, she just had a Jubilee, but in 1866 and 1870s, the Jubilees were very popular in Houston, Galveston, and various different places of Texas, Baltimore, Maryland, Washington, D.C., even in Philadelphia. So they called it a Jubilee. So you can go to the next one, Don. So kind of sort of now what the goal is, okay, we want to, you know, we're living in some odd times in our, I'll say, society. And you know, we can just start off with just talking about the amount of people that we've lost in our community since COVID started. We could talk about the amount of people that we've lost this year. But one of the things that I'm focusing on in my Philadelphia group in regards to Juneteenth is that we're focused on Father's Day along with Juneteenth. And we're utilizing Black Fathers Matter because here in the city of Philadelphia, we've lost over 350 men to gun violence in 2021. And right now, we lost 350 Black men because the numbers, even though we lost 500 plus people in Philadelphia, not all of them were Black men, but 350 is about the number that we lost in 2021 due to violence. That's not even including suicide. That's not including diabetes, heart disease, cancer, various different things like that. 2022, fast forward, currently we have lost 211 people in the city of Philadelphia. I would assume, I don't like to assume, but I would assume that about 150 plus are Black men that we've lost. A lot of fathers, a lot of young fathers that we lost in the city of Philadelphia. So our goal is to highlight Black fathers mattering, because the Black man has been emasculated every day, whether it's on TV, whether it's the commercial and the stereotypes of interracial dating, whether it's the buck breaking that we see, or whether we just see the violence that's going on. And then even just to go into the food, that food component with the health, our health is also taking a toll on us as Black men. So the goal for Juneteenth is to have a candlelight. And this candlelight is going to be important because we used to do candlelights in the Black community for memorials for, you know, our Civil War soldiers, our soldiers from Vietnam, our different soldiers that we've had. Currently, right now, we're losing our soldiers. We're losing our people who really should be on the front lines fighting with us, but there's so many different things that's going on. So, you know, this candlelight is going to be something I think that'll be powerful and impactful, because of course we still going to have fun on Juneteenth. We're going to have our vendors out there. We got over 25 Black vendors coming out. We looking to, you know, circulate $4,000 to $6,000 in the Black community on Juneteenth. We're going to have a DJ battle out here in Philly. You know what I'm saying? Real hip hop, like real hip hop music, but a DJ battle. We're going to do, we're going to award some of the elders in the community who lived in this neighborhood for 40 and 50 years, and they've seen the change. But most importantly, the candlelight is going to be important because, again, for some reason, it seems like Black fathers don't matter to people. And we have to make that a real statement, not just here in Philly, but really as a Black American community. So yeah, that's kind of, you know, that's really, you know, some of the Juneteenth stuff that I really just wanted to get into. But I think this year for Juneteenth, we focus on the genocide. We focus on, you know, the various different things that has been going on since we've been emancipated. We focus on just everything, quite frankly. And Juneteenth is our Independence Day. And that's also what they call Freedom Day. So just to circle it all around, on Juneteenth 2020, we declared ourselves mentally free. And a lot of people aren't mentally free. I know that sounds crazy, right? Like people even that are activists, they're not mentally free because they don't have a thought process to think for themselves. And that's one of the biggest things about Juneteenth that I've always been teaching and preaching. Have an identification of yourself, who you are, and your ancestors. Know where we've started at, to, you know, how we've been doing, to you know, potentially seeing the future that we have to go into. And we don't have a future as a Black community if we don't control the narrative on a nuclear Black family and focus on Black fathers mattering. So that's just a little information in regards to this Juneteenth celebration that will be going on in 2022. I definitely invite a lot of you all to take on the same initiative if you can, just focusing on Black fathers, because Juneteenth lands on Father's Day weekend. Is actually on the same day as Father's Day. I don't know, some people are having
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, some people having
Okay.
Yeah, some people having theirs on the 18th, some people having theirs on the 20th. We're having ours on the 19th because we stay true to Juneteenth. And that 19th, that date in particular, which is a Sunday, is Father's Day. So, you know, but yeah, that's pretty much all I had to say on that.
I think it's really cool. Well, let me just say this, and I'll open it up to the floor, that I think that we could come up with one night, whether it's the at midnight or when the sun sets on the 19th, we all go out and light a candle. Maybe some of us will take, but maybe with our families. And you remember your ancestors. You remember the debt that's owed. You remember the genocide. You remember Black fathers are, you know, without Black fathers, there will be no us. And also the thing I think about when people die now, especially older people, you know, dying, you know, they remember the people who are dying, you know, your friends and family who are in need and unfortunately pass away without repair, without reparations, and the fact that we haven't gotten it done yet, you know. And then also think about, you know, what the flag and what the holiday means, which is promise and opportunities that lay ahead for us, self-determination. So with that, that is basically our program. I was going to do some one-on-one, but essentially Juneteenth is coming up, and I think we have organically, you know, morphed into an activity that everybody can do on that holiday. If you don't, you know, if you're not going anywhere or whatever, but, you know, to maybe consider candlelight vigil, even at your city hall or something like that, because I think that would probably have more impact. Khalif, can you mute yourself real quick? But to do something like that, but to remember those things, I do think there's an element about the holiday that I don't feel complete ownership if, you know, we're just celebrating freedom. Let's think of, you know, the candlelight also represents enlightenment. And so like Khalif was saying, you know, not all of us are mentally free. So that candlelight not only reminds us of who has gone before us, you know, what has been done to us, not to minimize it, to understand that it is genocide, but also to represent enlightenment and hope, because, you know, we are Negroes after all. And that is why we're still here. So, but wow, today, wow, what about it? I really feel thankful that we've made this connection to our past. And she is so, you know, energetic and here for that smoke, all of it. She's here for all the smoke. And I think she's actually going to provide some great guidance and anchoring for us as a group. It's like, you know, how you were when you with your cousins, you know, when all your aunties and your mom went out, and how y'all acted, but when they came back and you had one adult, I feel like she might have that impact on us or our group. And I feel like she's very much in sync. It was like going home. And then of course, I love the way she says my name properly. Me being born in New Jersey, but here from down here in North Carolina. But so obviously I'm definitely so excited. And I feel the reconnection with Dr. Jennings proves that we are definitely on the path that we should be on, but also to, again, for me, not to minimize our situation. You see what has happened to Dr. Jennings and what she said happened to the rest of her comrades who followed the path that we are flirting with, or I'm definitely all in. And what became that, I don't think we're faced with that because of technology and we're more together, but let's not minimize, you know, what it is that the direction that we're moving in now. And I did want to say to her, and I will have discussions with her, I believe the association with communism is definitely a no-no. Fuck Putin and Russia and all of them and their problems, and she's definitely not a Pan-Africanist in the word. She's a Pan-Africanist nationalist as opposed to a Pan-Africanist socialist, which my brother Khalif made that distinguishing feature for me. Separate and apart from her, but they are two different things. So she's definitely squarely within our camp. So
doing a Twitter space on that.